In this video I will talk to you in English language. All my German friends, please do not worry that this will happen often or frequently now. It will happen only on occasion, and the occasion is now. Welcome to Zam's channel. I would like to introduce you to the installation of the parts delivered from the New Zealand company Vince and Hyde, especially the chain tensioners and chain guides for the Honda vintage motorcycles. I have here a CB 1100 engine, and this is also applicable for the 750 and the CB 900. So many in the world may be hopefully interested to see this, to get information about how to do it, and I hope I do it right. I have read the introductions, which are very well, and let's start. And certainly and especially I want to say thank you to Vince and Hyde, who have sponsored me these parts. I told them that I have a YouTube channel. I told them that the installation will be shown on a video. I did not tell them that I'm going to make this video in English to make it more public, but I decided to do so. But I want to thank them for giving us, Tom and me, these great parts, and it's a kind of compensation from me, from us, that I make this video in English. So please, my German friends, live with it. At first, and in this video, let's talk about the chain tensioners or chain guides, however you want to call it. There's something else here, but this is something I will install later, not in this video. This video will show perhaps not the complete installation of this set, but at least the preparation for installation, which is a little bit tricky on some point, but we will see. I think we will get it. I'm quite sure that those viewers that did not already switch off know that we have two chains, a short one and a long one. The long one connects from the crankshaft to the camshaft. This looks approximately like so, and you see this chain must be tensioned and it must be guided. And you can also see that this sprocket has half the size than this sprocket. This is because the crankshaft runs with the double speed of the camshaft. Otherwise we would not have a 4-stroke, but perhaps something else. We have two parts to keep this chain in line and to tension it. This is one part they call the tensioner, and there's another part they call the curved guide. This sits in the front of the engine, and this sits at the rear of the engine. These parts are very rigid. They seem to be milled from billet material, very fine. These two parts come with two screws, a long one with a counter screw, with a counter nut, and a short one. The short one is just a dummy. This screw is the one that does the work. It sits in the cylinder and presses with this tip against this dent, and this dent is laid out with metal so that we do not have so much wear on this point, and this has been deburred. It's really good, has been chamfered and fits exactly to this point. The threads have been a bit removed at the tip. I guess it was done on the lathe. It may look a bit complicated from beginning, but I think it's not. It's less complicated than the other one I will show you now. We certainly have two camshafts, one for the inlet and one for the outlet, and these two camshafts are connected together with a short chain. They call it the B chain, and I will show you. This short chain has also to be tensioned and to be guided, and this is the part that is responsible for doing that. It looks very easy, but it's a little bit tricky to install. You may want to know how the original Honda parts look like and how they are made. Here you can see them. These are the chain guides and tensioners from 2 engines. I have 2 engines from which I build up one, hopefully well working. And these parts were taken out of these 2 engines. And these parts are very defect. They decompensate on the corners, and you can find all that stuff on the oil pan later on. And this is mainly defect. Here you can see all this is chewed away. This is the guide. It's not too bad. This one is not too bad, the other one. Okay. This is the tensioner and the guide for the short chain, and usually here's a spring from here to here. I will see if I can find the spring and show you. This is the spring that was sitting here, and this is the rubber was around the spring. You can see it has been beaten away or eaten away by the short chain, and here the spring is nearly sawed through by the chain. You see, it's recommended to replace it with something better. That's what we do. That's why we are here, at least in this video. Let's take it away. Here's also a little screw with a counter nut. This is made for holding in this shaft into its position. We will see it later. This is the cylinder head from the 1100 engine, and as we were just talking about this little screw, I can tell you or show you where it sits. It will sit here and will clamp this shaft I showed you. I have just set the valve clearance in my last video, and I have removed the buckets because I need to install the camshafts without any binding, without any pressure or spring tension, and therefore I removed the buckets. Now I install the camshafts. Something is wrong, yes. What I always do wrong. Okay, now we have it. You may have recognized that we start with a tensioner for the B chain. This tensioner will live deep inside the head, below the sprockets, below the chain. To see how it works and how it fits, I will remove the cam chains again. They're a little bit sticky because there's still oil everywhere. This thing does not have any spring because it does not need one. It does not wear if it's installed correctly, in my understanding. The chain will run over it, well centered and well adjusted and well lubricated. I've just seen I've still a little bit dirt in this guiding hole. I will try to clean it out. It's recommended anyway to do things very clean as possible. Here we are. You should see what I'm doing. I will do my very best. Okay. The chain tensioner can move a little bit, which is very handy. This shaft will finally slide here in. It's easy, but first I want to show you something else. You can see that there is a hole drilled into this shaft, and this hole matches or is connected to this little hole, and here is an O-ring, a little gasket, and that's very tricky. This can be used to additionally lubricate the B chain for racing applications, they say. Okay, now let's bring this home. Now you could use an oil line with a banjo bolt and a hollow screw to connect it here. This is a brake line and it's the wrong size, just for illustration now. Now you could connect the other end of the oil line to a modified oil filter housing they supply. Not to this one certainly. You need a modified one, and this is the original one. Tom has painted it nicely. The modified one will have a stud and a surface to connect this, approximately here. Doing this would make the system spray oil out of this hole and help the bead chain to survive. Under racing applications, as mentioned, we won't do that. We will use this one. Now the next job is to make this mounting point properly sit on this boss. This appears to be easy, but sometimes it's not. And here it's not. It does not fit, and I will show you why. This is nothing serious, and it is described in the installation manual. It frequently happens that this part of the casting, this step is in the way, and it needs to be grinded off. And this makes clear why this job should not be done with an engine installed, with an engine completely assembled. The best way to do this is with an engine disassembled, like it is here. Here I can show you the same situation from the bottom view. Here comes the tensioner, and it wants to go down, but it hangs on this edge, and you need to shift it across, and you can bring it down, but now the mounting hole doesn't align anymore with the screw, as you can see. And there might be a second point of interference exactly here. But this we will see in detail after we have removed the first one. This is why you should read the manual in advance. Okay, let's go. You can use a small electric die grinder for that job. And I will do exactly that because a milling head does not fit, as you can see. This is why they recommend to have the valve and everything removed. I don't have it removed anymore. Therefore I try to cover everything as good as I can to prevent the swarf from distributing all over the place. Ten minutes of grinding, not a big thing. I will show you the result soon. It looks a bit like a surgery. Finally it is one. Don't do this with an engine assembled and installed. If you like, you can paint it, but you don't need to. Certainly this was a joke. Okay, there's nothing in there. Nobody managed to hide in the hole. And look what it does with the O-ring. This nose squeezes the O-ring. This is such a sharp edge. Okay, I will be fighting. Oh yes, this is coming well. Yes, I have a remote control for my vac. That's the way I am. I have a remote control for my shop vac because in my main profession I'm an electronic engineer. And I can do that. Okay, let's see if it fits. I ground, I chamfered, I filed, and I can only tell you never, never ever try this job with an engine completely assembled and installed. Never ever. It took a while until I was happy with the result, but now I am. The tensioner sits absolutely straight and is not tilted anymore. I will verify that there are no clearance issues. Everything feels good. This is the mounting of the tensioner from underneath. This is how I think that it should sit. For better alignment tests, I have left away the O-ring for now. It certainly will be installed finally. I may have taken away a bit too much material here, in this area. It was not necessary, but it's my first time. And look at this. This is poking out 2 millimeters for no reason. I have to grind it away. This is how it finally looks like. These are the tools I used. It was a little bit of trial and error. You can see that these tools have been clogged by the aluminum of the head. This also, I think these tools were not well suitable. This one was the one who did the show, I think. That was great. It didn't clog. It removed enough material, and this one I used to polish. This was okay as well, but you can see here it wears excessively at the corners. Okay. If you can use a tool like this, I think this is the best. I also have a set of bended files that were helpful as well, and a feeler gauge to check the clearance, certainly. But the best is yet to come, which is how to set the chain tension. For this I have removed the buckets and the shims. I don't have a new chain, but I will use the best out of two. No torque applied to the cams. Everything is absolutely free spinning. I'm a little bit surprised that the chain is that sloppy, but I think it's okay, because being sloppy is better than being too tight in this situation. The chain sits here at the back of the guide and tensioner. And if the chain would be too tight already, we are waiting for 4 millimeters of slack at this point. And if the chain would be too tight, we would have to lower the tensioner. And to lower the tensioner would mean to grind down the boss it is sitting on. This would be an additional task, but now we have the chain too sloppy. That means we have to make this point higher than it is now, to lift it up. And to lift it up means to shim it. And to shim this point with a washer, for example, is certainly much easier than to grind it down. Therefore, I'm really happy that the chain is sloppy and not too tight. Certainly, and for the final measurement, we will have to clamp down the camshafts. But for now, for the rough adjustment, I won't do that. I will try to open the screw while the camshafts are still installed. I think this should be working, and it is. And then I will try to find out roughly, approximately, what thickness of shim I may need to come close to the expected or wanted 4 millimeters of slack. And I'm absolutely surprised how high this must sit to considerably tensioning the chain. Now I'm close, so close that I want to clamp down the camshafts now. Using the 4 closest bearing shells will be sufficient. I think this is too tight, but we will see it soon. We would like to see 4 millimeters, 3 to 5, and needless to say, the center is 4. The height of the top of the chain now is at 3.4. I can use a magnet to keep the ruler straight. Wow, it's a big magnet. I should have a smaller one. But I don't have a smaller one, unfortunately. Okay. If I apply some force in both directions, I have barely a movement of 3 millimeters. This is way too tight. This means I have to lower the tensioner and to shorten the standoff I've used. This is an item of iteration with several removals and installations of the camshafts until it fits perfectly. This is how it goes. You need your time. Look at this. Most of my grindings were useless, or at least not necessary. I have not expected the tensioner to come so high. However, learning by doing, that's the main purpose. That's why I'm here. And showing, certainly. Showing you what I have learned. We learn together. I make the mistakes for the reason that you don't. Always good to have some rings for testing and evaluating, or some more. These are the 2 I used. We have 12 millimeters, and I will make a fitting part on my lathe now. I will use some scrap aluminum to make this. If you don't have a lathe, you can stack nuts and washers, that's no problem. Okay, I approach this in 0.2 millimeter steps, and I think it's just right. Medium force. I just relax my straightened arm on this point, and this is the tension I receive. And I feel this is good. This is my test procedure and it feels good for me. I do this all the very first time. Please use this as suggestion, not as the holy grail. Now I will show you what I'm left with. $11.25 accidentally. Now I will check with the washer I have removed. It's still squeezing a little bit, perhaps just enough. I will certainly have to check this with a screw set. This looks fine for me. As I use this device for clamping the shaft, I'm just thinking, oil can come into this little spray hole, which we are not using. The oil could creep along this shaft and fill up herein and perhaps drop out of the threads here. It's not very likely, but I think I will use a little bit of thread sealer here around. And certainly I will use a medium thread locker here. Okay folks, that was it with the bead chain tensioner. It was a little bit tricky, but it was not too difficult. You need to take your time, don't be in a hurry, and if I have one conclusion finally to make, then don't start grinding before you have not determined your needed standoff height and for the correct chain tension. Otherwise you may grind too much like I did. That was my main mistake with this, but finally I think it turned out well. Now let's continue with the large chain tensioners, which are two parts, not two parts in the video, but two hardware parts, and we will see it now. Okay, the 8-chain tensioner should be much easier to install, so they say. The barrel is still protected from painting. Okay, some jokes need to be. This is the part number, by the way. This part will sit here. Another joke. But it's not just a joke. I just wanted to show you that this small guiding pins will rest here. But this is the same with the original chain tensioner or chain guide. That's all it does. It's just sitting and guiding. This is, by the way, the front of the cylinder. The lower part has a kind of a fork, and this fork will find its place here in the engine housing. Just like that, if you have never seen it before. It's a bit sloppy in this condition because this point is missing. We are done with this one, nothing else to do, nothing to adjust. But the tricky part still comes. We still cannot fully relax. See this? This will be sitting here. It will be fixed in the cylinder head, this we will see later. But this is where the chain tension will be adjusted. This screw goes to this hole through the barrel and will sit on this point and will make the spring tension, will adjust the spring tension this way. For this it's necessary to have a good surface here, which we have, and a good surface here, which they made for us. But we don't have a thread here, and this is what we have to make now. That's the only difficulty in this task. But I think we have already solved larger problems. This screw fits herein, and this doesn't do anything other than sealing the hole. This means we need a small, short thread for here, and we need a long, all way through thread here. These are both 8 millimeters with a rise of 1.25. This is a very normal kind of a thread, but these holes are too small. This is a 6 millimeter drill, and we need a hole of 7 approximately. I will be using a 6.8 drill because I have one, but I think it won't hurt to use a 7 millimeter. Now let's start destroying the barrel. The lower one is the easier one because it's the shorter one. Yes, we try to make it straight. It's the best tab I have. A viewer has donated me some of them. Different sizes. Absolutely great stuff. The best I ever seen and the best I ever had. You can use them in machines or by hand as now. I prefer to do something like that by hand because I have a good feeling. Aluminium should be lubricated with alcohol, I learned in my very early days. Okay, we are through. Now I will remove the dirt a little bit from the inside for not to pull it out to the outside. Now the tab is clean and I will take it out. I wouldn't have needed to tap this all the way through, but I thought it would be a good exercise. Hand tight for now, it's a 13. Finally I will give it a little bit of a thread locker. If you don't have a sealing washer, you can use thread sealant. Tapping the upper hole is much more difficult because here we need to go all the way through. We have to. No choice to do it differently. And the problem is, or may be, or will be, that the tool will become thicker here and will most probably not be suitable for going all the way through. However, this is the largest challenge on this job. We will see how far this will go. Injection needles are good for something like that, not only for COVID vaccination. Okay, here we are. The tool will bind now. It seems that we are missing the last 10 millimeter perhaps. As I do not want to grind down the best tool I have, I will try a different one. And if this one needs to be grinded, I will sacrifice it, but it seems that it may be small enough here in this area that it comes through. This would be nice. And it just looks like as if it could happen this way. Where are we? Not yet through. It's cutting. I feel it cutting. I don't feel it yet. It's shifting out some swarf on the inside. What it certainly should do. Okay. 3 millimeters still. I think I should remove the clamps perhaps. And to give some possibility to spray in some lubrication. Nothing serious, just the wrench. Now I hope it will allow me for the final touch. It's already getting tight with the fins at the front. No, it's the back of the barrel certainly. But there's not much space anymore. All the tricks, all the tricks. There is only one attempt to do this. Yes. Maybe I can use a different kind of a wrench for the last 1 to 2 millimeters. I would like to have. I think more is not needed. Some more lubrication for spinning it back and then hoping for the best. Okay, it works well. Take me home, country roads. Well lubricated still. I think this is one of the older taps I have, but sometimes it still makes me happy. If somebody would ask me what is the most important tool, I would certainly say it is the shop vac. I think I may need some help. That's all. You set the tension until the slack is 0 and then you back it up 160 degrees, just 160 degrees, and then you're ready. But this will be subject of one of the next videos. I just want you to show, for completeness of this video, this will be inserted here. Let me remove some tensions just for sake of showing. This will be sitting here, and this pivot point is not centered. As you can see, this flat is larger on the bottom side and a little bit smaller on the upside. And the larger flat must face down and the smaller flat must face up, exactly this way. But I think this is self-explanatory. Nobody would seriously do it in a different way. You could, but you shouldn't. And finally, the mounting leg for the upper chain guide that is sitting here must be bended a little bit around this part. It must be wrapped around this portion here. But this is nothing I will do now, because I must admit I don't know where it is. I have to find it. And this is subject for the final assembly of this engine very soon. But I just wanted to let you know, just for completeness, that this will be necessary, this additional small modification. And I think it's easy to imagine how this screw comes through here and will touch this point and will finally be tensioning the chain. And now the sirens are noisy. They say motorcycles are noisy, but they are not. The sirens are. And finally they say, depending on how good your chain is, this screw may stick out. This screw may stick out a little bit too much, so that it interferes with the carburetor set, or with the bowl of the carburetor, or with whatever, I don't know yet. It's not visible at the moment, not yet visible. And if this happens, they say in their shop manual, you should shorten this screw and bring this tip in exactly this shape again, using a lathe, a mill or a file or whatever, so that it's good and just like this. I think it's an easy task again. But certainly this cannot be decided now. For now I can decide to terminate the video, say thank you for watching. For my German viewers, I apologize that this time I was talking English. For the native English speaker, I apologize for my a little bit German sounding English language, but I did my very best. And I'll see you next at Sam's channel. Bye bye.